Strawweights collide coming up this weekend. We have the Mexican-Canadian Lupita Godinez taking on John Lineker's spirit animal?
If Jessica Andrade didn't exist.
If Jessica Andrade didn't exist, you'd end up with Ariane Carnelossi. And it's such an interesting fight because for Carnelossi, comes into the UFC and they went, okay, well, in the past, you fought Amanda Hebos on the regional scene. Like, you have some fights that a lot of people recognize. How about Angela Hill? And Ariane took that fight and looked all right at points in that fight and then ultimately ended up getting finished in that fight due to a grotesque cut. Now, she comes back after a bit of a layoff, takes on Liang Na, and in that fight, listen, if Jeff Molina and Ari Qilong didn't happen at UFC 261, that probably would have been a fight of the night.
Incredible fight.
But it wasn't. And Carnelossi and Liang Na had an amazing fight. Carnelossi ends up getting the finish. Bit of an odd stoppage, but a good one by the end of it. And so she comes out after another bit of a layoff, and she gets another big-time finish win in the third round over Stella Nunes, and that was an amazing one. So Carnelossi coming into this one, having won 2 fights in a row. For Lupita Godinez, somebody that was known to fight every other weekend, whether that be at 115 or 125, including her fight on super short notice against Luana Carolina. But for Goodinez, she's been away for about 6 months. I listened to an interview with Sports Kita and Daniel Vreeland, and she basically said she's been training and improving and just trying to get a fight. So an interesting one for Goodinez, your former LFA champ. So this one is between a couple of fighters who are very dynamic. They can get it done in a lot of different ways. I absolutely love this piece of matchmaking here this weekend.
And what I really like about it is, this is going to be the best win on either fighter's record going forward, no matter what, and it's not even close. Because, I'll be honest, I've had a hard time breaking down Lupita Godinez at the UFC level. Her fights always have this weird oh-by-the-way to them. It's either she's fighting in a weight class that she doesn't really belong in, it's on short notice, it's always seemed thrown together at the last second, and that's why this fight with an actual full training camp should be a great one against Carnelossi, because stylistically, these two athletes match up very, very well. They can both get it done on the feet. They both get it done in similar but different ways on the ground. And that's why I think it's going to be interesting to see who goes for the first takedown in this fight. Because Carnelossi's interesting. I think she's the better offensive grappler in this matchup, but she's the way worse defensive grappler in this matchup. That's the weird thing. I think Carnelossi could get on top of Goodinez, hit her with great ground and pound, and look truly dominant in that top position in this fight. The flip side is, I do think Goodinez off of her back can offer a little bit more resistance than what Carnelossi would be able to off of her back if she was in a similar situation. Because with Carnelossi, when you're one of these fighters, when you're a baseball player like Chris Davis, who it's either home run or strike out, yeah, the home runs are really good, but the flip side to that is, if you're spending all that energy early on, if you're going for these big takedowns a la Jessica Andrade, what type of a fighter are you going to look like in the third round against someone like Lupita Godinez, who can scramble, can throw for volume? And I know Carnelossi and cardio haven't been an issue for her in the past, but Godinez is someone who's very steady from the first minute of a fight to the last minute of a fight. So I'm very curious to see, at what temperature does Carnelossi burn at, for lack of a better term? Does she go in there looking to be very aggressive early on? Does she play more of the defensive-minded fighter in that first round? See what Goodinez brings at her? Because this is what I will say. I actually think if Carnelossi does wait for Goodinez, it will open up some power shots for Carnelossi. And that is the one thing that I think, no matter what Goodinez does, she could become the better stylistic puncher. She could get the better technique behind her craft. She'll never hit as hard as Carnelossi, though. She genuinely does have, like, that 1% power in this weight division. So it will be interesting to see, how does Goodinez deal with the power of Carnelossi? And how does Carnelossi deal with just the well-rounded game of Goodinez?
So the craziest part about this one, when it comes to striking, technique, it goes to Goodinez. When you look at the way that Carnelossi strikes, upon further review of the tape study, before every blitz and flurry, because that's what she does. She just throws her arms out there and goes. Now, she is a little bit more crisp with one shot over the other, but the trouble is she drops her left hand right before she goes to strike every single time. Every single time she blitzes, she drops it. So she could get countered if she's pressuring forward, and she gets hit clean right down the middle in a lot of her exchanges. Now, she has a power advantage against just about everybody. She can drop just about everybody. Again, but if we go back, Na Liang dropped her with the first shot she threw. It was just a straight right hand that hit her flush right in the face and sent her down to the canvas. So, again, I love watching Ariane Carnelossi fight. I think she's an amazing fighter, great grappler. Even before that fight against Na Liang, she was competing at she won a no-gi competition right before that. Alexander Romanov's been winning no-gi competitions lately, and look what he did to Chase Sherman. But for Carnelossi, the scariest part about it, and I want to make sure that I get this right, because after that Na Liang fight, she had to get cleared to fight because she had that slip disc issue in her back, and it's happened twice so far in her UFC tenure. Definitely not a great thing at this point in your career to have.
But that was something we put a lot of stock into before her last performance, and she did look amazing against Estela Nunes. So I don't know how much stock I put in that. Still, it is something that has to be brought up because it has happened a couple of times, but I remember thinking that was going to be a very big talking point into her last fight, and she did look great coming out of that and didn't have any significant injuries.
Did look good there, and again, Liang Na was able to get the takedowns against her, had her in a man of crucifix at one point too. Carnelossi was able to get out of those against Estela Nunes. Did a lot of chasing around, but once she was able to mix in the takedowns, we know now that against Sam Hughes and against Ariane Carnelossi, Estela Nunes is not very good on the ground. Now, that's a lot about Carnelossi. When we look at it for Goodinez, the fight against Jessica Penne in the debut, listen, you can make an argument either way. It's a loss on her record. She ends up getting the win over Silvana Gomez Juarez. That's definitely a good one. Where
it was a 37-year-old making her UFC debut.
Ends up getting the finish in that one. Doesn't matter who it is. It matters how you do it. And then her last time out, she's able to get the win over Loma Lookboonmee, where Loma was coming off a win where she had completely out-grappled Sam Hughes. And then out there against Lupita Godinez, Godinez completely out-grappled Loma, who we know as such a great Thai striker, but really mixing things in at Bang Tao. So when I look at this fight, again, both of them, good grapplers, both good strikers. Everybody does it in a different way in this one. We look at the odds. Carnelossi opened him plus 130. She's a plus 170 underdog. Godinez opened at a minus 130. Minus 200 right now. Tapology votes are a surprise to us there to you. I'm going to say over under 60% Godinez.
I'll say over.
I'm going to say over. It's under. So 674 total votes, 55% Carnelossi, 80% by decision. For the 45% that have Godinez, 86% by decision. So Matt, the fan voting on Topology disagrees with the odds. I'm surprised that Lupita Godinez is this big of a favorite.
So am I. To me, this fight's a pick'em if there ever was one. And I never say this, especially for a prediction video. I kind of like Carnelossi in this, and I definitely like her at 170, because I do think stylistically they match up very well together. It's technique versus power, but really everywhere, be it on the feet or in the grappling, and that's why this is going to be an incredible fight no matter who wins. But I do think that the cardio of Carnelossi is kind of underrated. She's someone who can throw a crazy amount of output and still be active in that third round. So I do think with her already strength advantage, I do think with her underrated cardio, she'll at least be able to stay and maintain that level in the third round, and that's why I do have Carnelossi in this fight, but this is as evenly matched as any on the card.
Super evenly matched, and the odds are like that. So, like some other shows that are out there on the internet would say, it's dog or pass. But when I do look at this one, I like Lupita Godinez. When it comes to her scramble ability, when it comes to her offensive wrestling, is her jiu-jitsu on the same level as Carnelossi? Not necessarily. Is her punching power there with Carnelossi's? Not necessarily. Carnelossi is one of the sloppiest strikers for a Muay Thai artist you're going to find in this division.
And that's why I like her in this fight, though. She's fighting someone who doesn't really have the punching power to make her pay for that. And I know she got dropped 2 fights ago, but I look at when Jessica Andrade got dropped by Angela Hill. If you're really aggressive and you get hit by a shot you don't see, it doesn't matter what the person's punching power is, it just might make you slip and go down. So for Carnelossi, I don't think she's going to get caught by a big shot by Goodinez on the feet. I do think if she loses, it's going to be because Goodinez goes out there and thoroughly out-grapples her in the top position for 15 minutes.
Both of us split on the pick. I'm going with the Mexican Canadian Lupita Godinez. Remember UFC Moncton, Matt going with Brazil's own Ariane Carnelossi to get the win. It's a big time fight in the strawweight division, and up near the top in the co-main event, the belt is on the line between Namajunas and Carla Esparza. And in the main event, Charles Oliveira taking on Justin Gaethje. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.